If you hear the name Lockheed Martin, you might think it's the latest luxury brand or some vintage collectible. But trust me, the truth is far darker. This is a company that's been involved in every major US conflict from World War II to today. Lockheed Martin isn't just a name, it's the mastermind behind some of the deadliest weapons ever created. From the F-22 Raptor to the AC-130, Lockheed Martin didn't just change aerial warfare, they redefined it, creating a military complex so powerful it dominates the globe. But how did it all begin? How did two brothers with no engineering degrees build a $108 billion empire with more blood on their hands than any other company in history? And how did they create a monopoly so tight it has the US government locked in its grip? This is the story of Lockheed Martin, the architects of death, and their rise to unchallenged power. Boasting approximately 121,000 individuals worldwide, spread across over 350 facilities in 53 countries, with about 93% of employees based in the United States, Lockheed Martin is a company that is as American as it gets. Let's put it this way, this is a company that sells only to the US government and NASA. Yet, it still managed to be worth $139.7 billion as of December 31, 2024. Net worth aside, in 2024 alone, they made $71 billion in profit, a 5% increase from the previous year. But how? Well, the secret to this insane company is what they sell. Look, to put it simply, there is no US air supremacy without the engineers at Lockheed Martin. From the P-38 that tore the field in World War II, to the fearsome F-22 Raptor and the tactical airlift aircraft that fuel the world's military, the C-130 Hercules, Lockheed Martin has mastered the art of destruction and warfare. But to really understand how it all began, we have to turn back the clock all the way back to the beginning of air travel, because even though they didn't know it yet, two brothers were about to change the history of aviation, warfare, and the world for good. On a chilly December day in 1910, Allen Haynes Lockheed stood on a Chicago ball field, eyeing the delicate framework of wood, fabric, and cables before him. The Curtiss Pusher biplane had stubbornly refused to lift off, despite multiple attempts by others. Though he had never flown before, Lockheed's mechanical instincts told him the issue lay with the engine. With a few adjustments, he confidently climbed into the cockpit, ignoring the skepticism around him. He even offered 3-to-1 odds that he would be the first to make it fly, though no one dared take the bet. Moments later, to the astonishment of the gathered mechanics, he proved them all wrong. The plane lifted smoothly into the air, circling gracefully before landing with precision. Reflecting on that moment years later, Lockheed admitted, "It was part nerve, part confidence, and part sheer recklessness. But from that day on, I was an aviator." You see, the story of Lockheed Martin begins not in a boardroom or a factory, but in the dusty garages and makeshift workshops of two brothers with a shared obsession over flying. They were Alan and Malcolm Loughead, pronounced Lockheed, a name they'd later change to avoid mispronunciation. These two were born into a world where flight was still a fantastical dream. Neither had an engineering degree nor formal training, but they possessed something far more important: a relentless curiosity and a hands-on genius for mechanics. Much like the Wright brothers, their childhoods were spent tinkering with bicycles, engines, and whatever scraps of machinery they could find. To put it simply, their imaginations were soaring long before their planes ever would, and soon enough they would join it. The year was 1912. In a rented garage in San Francisco, the brothers built their first aircraft, the Model G, one of the first seaplanes ever. Honestly, it looked more like a fragile dragonfly than a machine of the future. During its construction, they caught the eye of Max Mamlock of the Alco Cab Company. Max was a local investor with a taste for risk and an instinct for innovation. He saw past the brothers' rough edges and lack of credentials and decided to fund their venture with a mix of $4,000 in cash and faith. It might seem small, but that $4,000 today is the equivalent of around $125,000. On December 19, 1912, Alan and Malcolm Lockheed founded the Alco Hydro Aeroplane Company, later renamed the Lockheed Aircraft Company. That very next year, on June 15, 1913, the Model G took flight, reaching an altitude of 300 feet and a speed of 60 miles per hour. It made 3 flights that day, proving to the world that the Lockheed's vision wasn't just possible, it was profitable. In fact, it did so well the brothers began charging $10 per passenger to soar over the Golden Gate. For a moment, the future seemed limitless. But let's put a pause here, because after this, things go horribly wrong for the brothers. And we'll get to that. For now, let's jump 4 months back from when they began working on the Model G to a rented church in Los Angeles, California, where the other half was hard at work trying to rule the skies. His name was Glenn L. Martin, and he was the other key figure in this story. On August 16, 1912, he founded the Glenn L. Martin Company in Los Angeles, California. Strangely, his journey began in an unlikely place, a rented church, where he built his first aircraft. Taking a bold leap of faith, he pursued his innovative design, encouraged by none other than aviation pioneer Orville Wright. You see, Glenn had a dream. He wanted to push the boundaries of aviation and establish the United States as a leader in aircraft innovation. He was passionate about designing and building planes that could serve both military and civilian purposes. His goal was to create aircraft that were faster, more efficient, and capable of transforming air travel and warfare. Martin was particularly interested in military aviation, aiming to provide the U.S. Armed Forces with cutting-edge bombers and reconnaissance planes. Fueled by this ambition, that same year he created the Martin TT, a 2-seat biplane trainer that was the start of his future. It was a pusher aircraft, meaning the engine and propeller were located behind the pilot. This design was heavily influenced by earlier Wright brothers aircraft and was intended for pilot training. Martin used it to train military pilots and even performed aerial exhibitions to showcase its capabilities. Because of this, his company quickly gained attention, setting the stage for its future role in military aviation. Fueled by success in 1912, Glenn Martin aimed to set a record for the longest open-water flight by flying 30 miles to Catalina Island. On May 10th, he and his team fitted a pontoon to a Martin Model 12 aircraft, ignoring the looming clouds. He took off from Newport Bay, waved to his parents and colleagues, and climbed to 4,000 feet. Relying on precise navigation, he emerged from the clouds after 30 minutes to find Avalon Bay straight ahead. Martin was quickly building a name for himself, but where one succeeded, the other was finding out that the skies were as unforgiving as they were vast. The Lockheed brothers' air tour business hit a snag after Henry Ford declared he wouldn't board their plane even if he was given all the money in the world. Dismissing their designs as novelties, the brothers faced a harsh reality. Aviation was a game for the wealthy and well-connected. To make matters worse, Mamlok's funds dried up, and by 1913 not only had their company collapsed, but Mamlok seized their plane, demanding they pay back the $4,000 if they wanted it returned. Undeterred, they pivoted. The Lockheed brothers spent 2 unsuccessful years prospecting in California's gold country. When that failed, Allen became a freelance pilot, barnstorming at country fairs while Malcolm sold custom car parts, yet the dream never died. That was when Paul Mayer, a real estate mogul, stumbled upon Allen's aerial stunt shows in 1915. Enthralled, Mayer bankrolled a new venture, the Lockheed Aircraft Manufacturing Company. This time, the brothers aimed higher, and for a time, they struck gold. Their F-1, a sleek wooden seaplane, became their first commercial success, showcasing amazing stats. But it didn't last. After World War I ended, the U.S. government flooded the market with surplus military planes. Overnight, their business evaporated. By 1921, they were bankrupt again, their workshops silent. Meanwhile, as they struggled, Glenn L. Martin, the Kansas-born daredevil who taught himself aeronautics by crashing homemade gliders into barns, had built the Martin MB-1 bomber in 1918. This bomber became the U.S. Army's first American-designed bomber, cementing his reputation as a master of military aviation. But much like Lockheed, Martin too was in for a shock when the Great Depression nearly gutted his company. Survival meant adaptation, so Martin shifted from planes to building radios, and actress Jean Harlow's custom aluminum speedboat. It was a humbling era for both companies, one where innovation bowed to necessity, but ultimately one they managed to survive. So, what happened next? Well, the Lockheed brothers clawed their way back in 1926, when Allen founded the Lockheed Aircraft Company in Hollywood, California, with a new investor, Fred Keeler. During this period, the Vega, a bullet-shaped monoplane, became a legend. And when I say legend, I mean legend. Aviators like Amelia Earhart and Wiley Post broke records in its cockpit, slicing through clouds and continents. Lockheed's planes weren't just fast, they were stylish and reliable, a symbol of the Roaring Twenties' boundless ambition. And just when things began to look good, World War II erupted, a cataclysm that reshaped the industry. But this time, the two companies were ready. In fact, it was during this war they got their first major military contracts. And what they created simply changed the game. They gave the world the P-38, while Martin gave us the B-26 Marauder. Lockheed's P-38 Lightning was a twin-engine fighter with a Predator silhouette that dominated the Pacific, while Martin's B-26 Marauder bombers pummeled Axis targets in Europe. Factories hummed around the clock. Women riveted fuselages while engineers raced to outthink the enemy. War made giants of both companies, and by 1945, Lockheed employed 90,000 workers, while Martin's empire sprawled across Maryland. You need to understand, this war gave rise to amazing warplanes like Lockheed's C-69 Constellation, a high-speed transport aircraft that later became a civilian aviation icon, and the Hudson, a versatile bomber used for reconnaissance. Meanwhile, Martin's B-10 was an innovative all-metal monoplane bomber that revolutionized military aviation, while the PBM Mariner patrolled the seas. Even the legendary B-29 Super Fortress, which ended the war, was produced by Martin. These aircraft weren't just machines, they were game changers that helped shape the course of World War II. But once the war was over, what then? Post-war peace brought new challenges as commercial aviation boomed. Martin and Lockheed both gambled on passenger planes, but lost to giants like Boeing. Martin's 202 was plagued by crashes, while Lockheed's Constellation, a graceful superstar of the skies, faced production delays. But as they say, adversity breeds reinvention, and for these two companies, the Cold War was their new goldmine. War was profitable, and no one was better positioned than these companies. Martin pivoted to missiles, diving headfirst into the Cold War's atomic frenzy. In a twist of fate, this pivot led the company to the stars, as its Titan rockets later launched Gemini astronauts, marrying war machinery with cosmic exploration. Lockheed, meanwhile, doubled down on defense. In the 1950s, they introduced the greatest transport plane ever, the C-130 Hercules, a hulking cargo plane so rugged it became the backbone of global militaries, and still flies today, 70 years later. In every sense, the C-130 is one of the most successful military transport aircraft in history. It excelled in versatility, handling everything from troop transport and cargo delivery to medical evacuation and aerial refueling. Its rugged design allowed it to operate from unprepared runways, making it valuable in conflicts from Vietnam to Iraq. With over 2,500 units built and still in production after nearly 7 decades, the C-130 remains a top choice for over 70 nations, not to mention its adaptability, including the AC-130 gunship variant, which solidified its reputation as one of the most enduring and widely used aircraft ever. But that wasn't the only aircraft they made. In 1964, Lockheed came up with the SR-71 Blackbird, a spy plane cloaked in secrecy for years. Faster than a bullet, sleek as a shadow, it was the embodiment of the Cold War's intrigue, skimming the edge of space to photograph Soviet silos. This was engineering at its finest. But once again, history took a turn. The Cold War ended in 1991, with the USSR gone and defense budgets shrinking. The companies needed a new way to survive. So they scrambled to merge, and in 1995, Lockheed and Martin Marietta, a descendant of Glenn's original company, joined forces, creating a military monopoly, Lockheed Martin. Under this new entity, the new millennium saw the company redefine warfare. From the F-22 Raptor, a stealth fighter with the radar footprint of a bumblebee that rendered older jets obsolete, to drones like the RQ-170 Sentinel that turned pilots into remote operators, and even satellite networks that paved the way for global surveillance. The company became the architects of modern war. In fact, today Lockheed Martin's reach extends beyond Earth, building Mars landers and dreaming of lunar bases. So, as we've seen, Lockheed Martin didn't just build planes, they built an empire that shaped the skies and, more importantly, the fate of nations. From the brothers Lockheed's early struggles to the rise of Glenn L. Martin's aviation feats, both companies weathered war, disaster, and competition to become giants of modern military aviation. Today, Lockheed Martin dominates not just the sky but entire defense sectors, holding billions in contracts and unchallenged influence. Through it all, one thing remained constant: the audacity of two brothers and an engineer far away who refused to let failure, war, or gravity keep them grounded. From canvas wings to stealth coatings, their legacy is a testament to the power of stubborn vision and the endless human urge to soar. But what's more chilling is the legacy of that dominance. What began with a biplane and an unshakable dream has evolved into a corporate behemoth, entwined in the global war machine. With planes like the F-22 Raptor and the C-130 Hercules, and an unrelenting hold on military contracts, Lockheed Martin, carrying Martin's legacy, continues to define the future of warfare, its influence spreading far beyond what any one company should wield. So the question remains, how much control over our world does a single company have? And as Lockheed Martin pushes further into the next century, will we continue to let them redefine the power balance? Only time will tell, but one thing is for sure, this is a story that is far from over. If you enjoyed diving into the world of Lockheed Martin and the legacy of Glenn L. Martin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, drop a comment if you have any thoughts or questions about this powerhouse of the skies. We love hearing from you.